Hello, welcome back to my channel. My name is Pat and today I'm bringing you guys my September wrap up. For the month of September, I read a total of 18 books. Last month I read 13 books and now I read 18 books. I don't know if that will continue for October, but I'm very excited because I think I had a really good reading month this month too, and I feel like I also read very diverse genre-wise in books. So we have a lot of books to talk about. Let's get started. So the first book, I technically finished this in August, but I wasn't able to include it because I finished it like end of August. And so that is The Hating Game by Sally Thorne. I rated this a 4.25 out of 5 stars. It's very funny. It's an adult romance. It's not new. A lot of people talked about it before, and I'm not really one to read a lot of romance novels because I actually find maybe I'm growing out of young adult romance, but more of adult romance. So we will talk more about that as we go along to the rest of our books. I really enjoy the characters. I love the way they hate each other. Like, they just can't help hating each other. So we're following two characters who are in the beginning or before this whole situation with them being in the same company. They are two different kind of publishing companies, but because they both kind of, or one of them was kind of going bankrupt or something like that, they decided to join together, and so they have like two CEOs, and so they're assistants of the two CEOs. They have this new position that both of their bosses are like saying that they should try for it, and because it's like just under CEO. And so they both want it and they both are like fighting for the position. So their rivalry becomes even harsher. So we follow them and obviously they fall in love. I love their like snarky comments every day. And you can definitely feel the tension, like the sexual tension in the air. Like I really enjoyed this book. I laughed out loud so much. The kind of conflict at the ending was a little whatever, but at the end I really enjoyed it overall, and so 4.25 out of 5 stars, which made me really want to read more adult romance novels because I really enjoyed this one. Okay, so the next book that I finished is The Library of Legends by Janie Chang. So this is set in 1937 China during the Japanese War, and we are following Luen and the rest of her friends in the university where they travel across China to go to a safer place. So she's traveling with her entire university, and they have this the Library of Legends that they have with them, which is a collection of books that are about the mythological creatures and pretty much very essential to the history and culture of China. So they're taking care of it, making sure that it's not going to get destroyed. And along the way, she discovers this secret world of mythological creatures that do exist with us, and how the war has affected them as well, and how the war and why she suddenly has the ability to see them, and also the relationships that she formed along the way and the people that she got to know, also in relation to the world, the secret mythological world. So this is historical fiction with a fantasy kind of twist, kind of like magical realism type of book. But I really enjoyed this. I rated this a 4.5 out of 5 stars. The writing was really good. I really enjoyed the characters. And although obviously they're not perfect, we meet a lot of different characters throughout this book that have different roles in the war. And you see just the experiences that people have during those times. And the atmosphere was really good. Like, I felt like I was here with them, experiencing everything that they were experiencing. And I also really love like the professor and his obvious love for literature and the history and the culture and the different stories, and I really truly enjoyed this book. If you were looking for like historical fiction set in Japan with twists of mythological magical creatures, read this book. So the next book that I finished is Ice Planet Barbarians by Ruby Dixon. I heard about this from Cindy, from Wind with Cindy, and she described this as like really tall blue aliens with like really long dicks. And at first it's like, oh, whatever. But I feel like I've heard more people talk about it. I was like, okay, fine, let me read it. Obviously, this is smut. This is just plain smut. This is a very short book. This was like 200 pages, I think. I just borrowed it through the library, and it's okay. It started out very dark. Okay, it has very dark themes, especially in the beginning, and I wasn't expecting it to be that dark. So I was very intrigued, and I kept reading it, and we definitely kind of worked past that and got very much into the smutty scenes. So essentially the story is I forgot her name, the main character in the first book. We follow her as she gets abducted by these aliens, and essentially what they are like, I think they were going to be sold to another race of aliens for, I don't know, prostitution and stuff. And so they leave Earth, and then I think they crashed or something. And so, oh no, they attempted an escape, and then they crashed the plane. They arrived in this planet that's really, really cold, and most, if not all of them, were like really injured, and the least injured one I think is Georgie. I think her name is Georgie. So she tries to get some help. She meets this alien guy person, and they have this thing similar to like the Twilight imprinting of werewolves where they meet their mate. And yeah, it's yeah. So essentially it's not like very similar to imprinting in that there's just a connection. In here, it's like they make you horny, pretty much. The imprinting. I forgot what it's called. The mating thing that they have to just make both parties very horny. So yeah, there's obviously a lot of smut and sex scenes, and so I think each book follows a different character that are like one of the human characters, and I rated this at 2.75 stars. I mean, it was fun. Plot wise, it didn't really make a lot of sense. The characters are fine. I didn't really end up caring very much about them, but I was very intrigued in what was going to happen and what's going to happen to them, and everything that's happening. And I feel like they're going to discover more about the world and stuff. So yeah, I kind of read through the rest of the books because I was curious about the world, and because there were like hints of like other stuff around them and like more of the history of how these aliens were here, the blue aliens, because it seems like they were also not the original inhabitants of this planet. They were from another planet as well. So 2.75. I mean, it was fun, very sexy. So if you're looking for that, for very sexy smutty book series, I think there's like 10 books in this series, so go ahead and read this. Okay, so after that, I read The Poet X by Elizabeth Acevedo. This is her first book, and as you can see, it has won a lot of awards. And I didn't realize this was recently published. Like, this is her first book, and this was published 2018, so it's only been 2 years, but I've heard so many people talk about this. This is a book written in verse, which means everything is in poem form, and I really, really, really enjoyed this. I rated this 5 out of 5 stars. I truly related to the character in a way that I didn't expect to relate. Like, her relationship with religion, her relationship with her body changing very early on compared to a lot of other people, and how the world kind of changed around her because she was changing as well. She was turning into a woman, and then suddenly she has these people looking at her, saying stuff like about her, and I really related a lot to that. And she grows and develops, and she has all of these anger and sadness inside her that she didn't know what to do, and then she discovers poetry, and she starts writing, and then she discovers slam poetry, and there's a lot of things that she's going through that makes her insecure and unsure, but she has a lot of passion, she has a lot of anger, she has a lot of things to say, but she's afraid that people don't really want to listen to what she's saying, and I truly related to her. I read this in one sitting because although it's like 350 plus pages, it's written in verse, so it's very short. But yes, I have a lot of tabs here of like verses that I just loved and related to. So if you haven't read this, read it. It won't take you a very long time to read this because it's written in verse. Okay, so the next book that I finished is Vicious Spirits by Kat Cho. I rated this a 4 out of 5 stars. This is a companion / sequel to Wicked Fox by the same author, obviously. And here we're following more of the best friend of Jihoon, Sumin, and the goblin that we met, Junu. And they have a love-hate relationship as well, which I really enjoyed seeing develop because Junu obviously is an immortal, so he's lived a long time. He has passed, like why did he turn into a goblin, and so we explore that, and also Sumin's personality and past as well, and her wants and desires, and the things that she hides underneath her tough exterior, which is so fun to watch. I really love the relationship that formed between the two of them, and the world is obviously complex. There's a lot of things that we can definitely explore here still, but we're still staying in like the world between or among or around our main characters. So it's not gonna get very complicated. I don't know if there's gonna be a next book in the series, and I don't know what it's gonna be about. I don't remember this ending in a cliffhanger. So yeah, but I'm very, very happy I read this. I really enjoyed this. This was a lot of fun. So Vicious Spirits by Kat Cho. Okay, so the next book that I finished is Phoenix Unbound by Grace Draven. I've heard of this book years ago, and I wasn't sure, it wasn't at the top of my list, but I remember somebody talking about it, and I was like, let's read it. So I read it, and this is focusing on our character who can control fire. And at the beginning of the story, you were following as she gets taken from her village to the capital of the city. It's very reminiscent of Roman era, where they have these soldiers or fighters that are fighting to the death. And they also have another tradition where every spring they collect women from different villages and they burn them at the stake as offering to the gods. And she's one of those. But her secret is that she can control fire, and in their country actually, there's always one girl who can control the fire, and so that one girl every year keeps going to the same ritual until they're gone or they're dead or whatever. They can also change faces. That's why she's able to keep going to this ceremony each year. And in one particular ceremony where we start, the best fighter in the arena recognizes her and sees through her illusion and asks her help to help him escape as well. And so we follow them, and it becomes much larger than that. We find out that this guy is from this place where the Empire hasn't had the chance to conquer because they have this wall of fire that protects them. And they have these kind of priestesses that can also control fire. And so he calls them Agassiz. And so he starts calling her Agassiz and actually abducts her and brings her to this to his city and still enlists her help. And so we follow them, starting with a love to hate relationship as well, hate to love relationship as well. And we discover more about the world and the current kind of political society and what's been going on. It gets very dark because there is war and there's a lot of killing and murder and rape. Yeah, I rate this a 4 out of 5 stars, 4.5 out of 5 stars. I enjoyed the character. The atmosphere was really great. It felt like I was really in the war, kind of situation. It was very tense, dark, and I really enjoyed this. I don't know if I want to read this companion novel because we're following a different character now, and so I don't know. We'll see. But for now, I really enjoyed Phoenix Unbound. Okay, so the next 3 books that I finished are part of the series called The Dark Elements by Jennifer L. Armentrout. So it consists of White Hot Kiss, Stone Cold Touch, and Every Last Breath. And here we're following our main character. I forgot her name. I'm really bad at this, at remembering names. Essentially, she's half warden, half demons. So a warden is kind of like a descendant of the angels. And, obviously demons are like the fallen angels. So she's half warden, half demon, and she's adopted into one of the warden families, and she works for them because she has this ability to touch a demon, and the wardens can see her touch, and then they can track them. And so that's what she initially does for this, for the wardens. And then one night while she was tagging, she meets this demon, a seeker demon. So, a demon that seeks, that appears to be seeking her. And another demon appears, who is a higher demon, like a prince of hell, something like that, and saves her. And then she keeps encountering these demons that are looking for her. And then this guy shows up, Roth, the demon, shows up in her class and tells her that she's there, blah, 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 etc. And that's where we go from there. She's also in love with her warden stepbrother since she was a young girl, but obviously she starts to fall for this high demon guy who she shouldn't, but here we are. And so we follow her and we follow them as they discover more about the world. Well, she discovers more about the world because obviously Roth knows everything there is to know. There's a lot of secrets, there's a lot of things that she doesn't know about herself that she discovers, etc. And the ending of this first book, actually, I read this book before. I finished it and I remember wanting to read the second book, but the second book wasn't out yet. And then the second book came out, third book came out, I never got the chance to pick it up. And it's been a year, so I reread it. I actually remember some parts, but most parts I forgot. I only remember the very important parts, especially the ending of the first book where it's a really good cliffhanger. That's why I really wanted to read the rest of the books. But yeah, so what did I rate this? So I rated each book a 3.75 stars. It was a lot of fun. The characters are fun. I like more of our other characters more than our main characters, except maybe Roth. I find him very interesting. Yeah, plot-wise, it was, it was good. It wasn't the most complex it tried to be, but it's very YA. So I think, again, I'm going out of YA. So 3.75, still a really very good story. It was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it a lot. So those are the 3 books in that series. And then after that, I read Me Before You by Jojo Moyes. And okay, I cried. Okay, I cried. The characters are fine. I liked them initially, but then as the story went on, I wasn't very sure. And then I really disappointed 25 stars, okay? I still cried, but it's more of not because I'm sad of what happened, but because it's hard to talk about if you haven't read it, if you don't know what it's about. Our main female character is called Louisa. And then Will Trainer, who is wheelchair bound after an accident. So essentially, Will has lost the ability to move his legs and I think one of his arms, and he has limited movements in one of his other hands. So he's wheelchair bound and he's very acerbic. He's described as acerbic, moody, and bossy. And so we follow the relationship that obviously it starts as a hate to love relationship as well, where they really dislike each other. And okay, so I've heard about this before because I know that there was a movie out with Emilia Clarke, which I haven't seen it, and I forgot his name. The one who played Finnick in Hunger Games. Sam Claflin. Okay, here we go. And I've heard some people talk about this, and I don't really pay attention to it a lot because I wasn't very interested in reading it. And then I started hearing people say that, it's not a very good book, etc. And especially from the disabled community where, they're talking about it's not a very good representation of disability. And essentially, okay, so I'm gonna put a spoiler right here, and then when I'm done, then you guys, if you don't want to hear it, just mute it or skip. So Will wants to go to this center in Sweden and end his life, essentially. He gave his parents 6 months, and that's why Louisa's contract was only for 6 months. And then when Louisa finds out about this, she was like, no, I'm not gonna be part of this, which is good. I don't want to be part of it either. And then she says, okay, but I'm gonna try to convince him to not go through with it. And she does try, but when they finally have this talk of why Will wants to end his life, and Louisa's still trying to convince him, he says that he used to be pretty much a really active guy, etc. And so he says that him being wheelchair bound was not his life. It's not him. So he'd rather die than live in a wheelchair. So that's the main thing. And I've read a lot about this and seen some videos about this, and I will link a video down below that I think was really well done, where they discuss the book and what happened in the book and their thoughts on it. And essentially, I've heard, from other disabled people as well, is that there are people who think that way, that they're so miserable and they do want to, die instead of, living in a wheelchair. But it doesn't send a very good message to non-disabled people or able-bodied people and disabled people. So yeah, that's the main thing. The people, disabled community, were saying it's not a very good representation or a very positive representation of the disabled, or the experience of being disabled. And they said that it's not very well researched as well. So yeah, 0.25 stars. I still cried because I was very frustrated with how it ended and what happened. And yeah. So the next book that I read after that was, thank God, Avatar: The Last Airbender, The Lost Adventures and Team Avatar Tales. It's a graphic novel. I borrowed it from the library. It's a lot of fun. I enjoyed it. 5 out of 5 stars. I miss my Avatar gang. I miss the gang. I still have a few graphic novels to read, which is good, but I'm trying to take it slow because this one I read in one sitting and I was like, oh, that's not good. So right now I'm 50% through The Promise. So I'm taking that slow because it's also a really emotional book, graphic novel. I'm very scared. I don't want my gang to be hurt and sad and emotional. So yeah. Okay, next one. Cinderella is Dead by Kalynn Bayron. This is the next book that I read. I read this 3.75 out of 5 stars. This has been going around BookTube and Bookstagram for months now. And the cover is very pretty, and I love retellings, especially dark retellings of fairy tales. So essentially here in the world of Cinderella. And Cinderella has been dead for hundreds of years, and there has been this tradition every year now of women getting sent to the ball to find partners. And we're following our main character who doesn't want to go to the ball because she's in love with her best friend who's also going to the ball in the same year as her. And we follow her as she tries to fight this and discover more about the world and the history and the story of Cinderella and more about her country. So yeah, I really enjoyed this. The characters, I really didn't enjoy that much. There was also instant love that I did not like. I felt like attraction definitely was there, but we didn't really explore their getting to know. They just kind of started caring for each other a lot, and it didn't feel really like believable. It's instant love. So that, but I did enjoy the exploration of like the story and their interpretation throughout the years and what might have really happened, etc. So yeah, that's Cinderella is that. I liked it. I enjoyed it. Okay, the next book that I finished is The Unhoneymooners by Christina Lauren. I was very careful going into this because I have heard a lot about other like adult romance novels, and people talking about how much they loved it, etc., etc. It was really good, but I didn't like it. This one, I rated a 4.25 out of 5 stars. Really enjoyed it. I had so much fun reading it. The hate to love is so good because they're like banter and the things they say to each other. It's like so freaking hilarious. Okay, so we're following the sister of the bride and the brother of the groom, essentially. They hate each other in this wedding. Everybody gets food poisoning, except for the two of them, because she doesn't like seafood, he doesn't like buffets. Okay, let me get the names because holy shit, I can't do this like this. Okay, I'm really bad with names. Oh my god. Okay, so I'm gonna read this to you. Olive is always unlucky in her career and love in, well, everything. Her identical twin sister, Amy, on the other hand, is probably the luckiest person in the world. Her meet cute with her fiancé is something out of a romantic comedy, and she's managed to finance her entire wedding by winning a series of internet contests. Worst of all, she's forcing Olive to spend the day with her sworn enemy, Ethan, who just happens to be the best man. So they go to this honeymoon because they're the only ones who didn't get sick from food poisoning because they didn't eat the seafood, and so because it's a free honeymoon to Hawaii, they agree to pretend to be the married couple and go to this honeymoon so it doesn't go to waste. And so obviously it's hate to love, and oh my god. Okay, so the only thing that I didn't really like about this is like my thought was like, okay, so how are they gonna work through this with their siblings married to each other and they're essentially sister and brother-in-law? How are they gonna work around that? And so yeah, how they worked around it was, I wasn't, the big fan of, but I still really enjoyed their relationship with each other. I feel like they're really good for each other, and just the hate to love. There's a reason why you hate somebody, like actually really, really hate somebody. Like everything that they do is like getting on your nerves. If you don't dislike somebody, fine. You don't have to look at every single thing that they're doing and have to like, get on to them like that. There's something in there. Okay, so there's like a repressed sexual attraction a lot of times, so I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed it. So 4.25. Okay, so the next book that I finished is 1984 by George Orwell. Now it took me a while to finish this because it was a very hard book to read. Not just the atmosphere, but also just the writing. I just couldn't get into the writing. I was already like, I want to say halfway through when I started to get used to it and I started to like really pay attention to it. I had to constantly pause and like read a summary of what happened because I didn't want to miss any like information I might need as I go through the book. So I rated this a 4.5 stars still, though. It's not my fault that the book is, well, it's my fault that I had a hard time, reading the book. It's just not my type of like writing style. So I'm not used to that kind of writing style. But I still think this is a very important read, and I feel like there's a lot of analysis and discussions that can be made from this book that have already been made from this book, and so I feel like I will get much more from this book from reading the analysis, and because I don't really have anyone to discuss it to, I think it's a really good book to study in school and discuss in school with other people. So yeah, 1984 by George Orwell, a very important read, so if you haven't read it, read it, and then if you really want to, if you're like me and you need to learn more about this book and analyze more about this book, analyze this book a little bit more, read analysis stuff on the internet. There's a lot, obviously, for this book. So, for George Orwell. I'm already tired from speaking. Okay, so the next book I do have a physical copy of, but I lent it to my sister. I told her to read it because I really loved it. And that is Good Life, Chloe Brown by Talia Hibbert. I rated this a 4.75 out of 5 stars. What else is there to say? A lot of people have talked about this, a lot of people loved it. I loved it too. I mean, so we're following Chloe, who after almost dying decides to make a list of stuff that she wants to do to get a life, because she's described herself as, not having a life ever since she developed this chronic disease called fibromyalgia. And she's, constantly in pain, she gets headaches, she gets weak, and so she drinks a lot of medicines, and because of that she's changed her lifestyle and become kind of sheltered because of that. And so she decides to make this list to start getting back her life, and one of this lists is to get her own house. So she gets her own apartment, and in this apartment the superintendent is red, and they have a hate relationship as well. Can you see like a pattern in what I've been reading recently? Hate to love. It's really good. Like, it's one of the best tropes ever, but it's also one of the tropes that might not get done very well. But so far this month, the hate to loves have been just doing it for me. So they have a hate to love. Obviously there's sexual tension. They actually really are attracted to each other, and I really loved how the relationship kind of just, it was, I love Red, okay? Can I have a Red in my life? He's precious, and he's so kind, and he's so nice, but he's not a pushover. Not really. He's just good, you know? When you get a character that's just good, it's very rare, and he has just the way that he talks and thinks about Chloe is like precious. So I can't wait to read the rest of the books in this series. I kind of heard mixed reviews on Take a Hint, Danny Brown. I don't know why. Some people say that they love it more than Chloe Brown, but some people say that it was a lot worse, or like it wasn't as good. It was actually bad. So I'm very curious about what I'm gonna think of the next book. But I don't want to read it yet because Eve Brown is coming out later next year, so I don't want to have a very long waiting game. So instead, I'm just going to read Danny Brown next year, early next year, and then wait a few more months, and then Eve Brown comes out. And so yes, I'm very excited. I want to read it. 4.75. Okay, the next book that I read is Loveless by Alice Oseman. You can see my tabs, and the reason why I really picked it up is because of Gabby from Gabby Reese. She talked about this, and she said that she related so much to the character because the character her name's Georgia, and she has never been in love, never been kissed, never had a crush, but she's fanfic obsessed and a romantic, and so she's sure that she'll find her person one day. But then as she starts to really like put herself out there and try to find somebody, she realizes a lot of things about herself that kind of obviously confounds her because she's a romantic. She's obsessed with love. She's in love with love, and I would describe myself as that. I'm a romantic. I'm in love with love, and I relate to her character very much as well because I'm 24. I've never been kissed. I've never had a boyfriend. I've never dated anybody. I've gone on one date, and that was like last year. And so I read a lot about her. And then she goes to university planning to find love, and her actions wreak havoc among her friends. She questions why romance seems so easy for other people yet not for her. Same. With new terms thrown at her as sexual or romantic, Georgia is more uncertain about her feelings than ever. Is she destined to remain loveless, or has she been looking for the wrong thing all along? So I also have heard some people say it's not a very good age representation. I don't know about it. I'm still researching about asexual and aromantic terms, plus like the complexities of it, because it's also a spectrum. So it's not just you're asexual. There's also a term called demisexual. So I'm still learning about those terms as well, and trying to see if I am in the spectrum personally. I don't think so, or maybe I just need to find a specific term. But at the end of the day, I don't want to personally label myself because it's a lot more complicated than one label. And I actually really like the part where she researches herself and finds out if it's really a term that applies to her, and she discovers it's very complex. It's very overwhelming, and it is. So yeah, I really enjoy this. I love the characters. I don't know, I fell in love with Jason already. Like the first 20-30 pages, he's just so nice. He's a good person, you know? So I really enjoyed his character. And I felt so bad for him, okay, for what happened. And I was just already feeling it. But the characters are not perfect. They're not described as perfect, and they're not supposed to be perfect. They're teenagers in university, and they're trying to discover who they are and what they want to do, and so they're gonna make mistakes along the way. And so I really enjoyed their journey actually, because it challenges their friendships. It wreaks havoc. The whole thing like really challenges them individually and together. And I just really love the relationships that they have here, because I don't want to spoil anything, but there's a line here in this book that kind of summarizes the entire journey that they had, and it was so good. was so good. It was so good. There's a lot of things that happen here that I didn't expect, but I loved. And I feel like we need to see more in books. Like, romantic love is great, but let's have more like friendship, found family type of love, you know? Yeah, so Loveless. Okay, so the next book that I finished is Rich Dad and Poor Dad. Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. And so this is a nonfiction about money and investing and being smart with your money and learning more about money that they didn't teach you about in school. And so I think this is a really good first book for someone who's still starting on like learning about money and what they can do with their money. And yeah, it says here what the rich teach their kids about money that the poor and middle class do not. So it kind of summarizes essentially what this is about. And so if you really want to like take the first steps in your like investing and getting smarter with money, I wouldn't really recommend this book. It's more of if you want to learn more about money and you know, how you can really like get out of the whole 9 to 8 job. Read this to give you an idea on where you can start. This doesn't really give you like concrete steps you can take. Not really. It gives you examples of what you can take, but it doesn't really break it down and tell you everything that you need to know about it. So it's more of like a beginner's guide to learning about money if you don't know anything about money and stuff. So yeah, I liked it. I enjoyed it. Rated as 4 stars. Very informative. But yeah, I need to read more of books like this to like help me kind of decide what my first step is gonna be. Yeah, we should have read that. Okay. Whew, we're on the last book. We made it. The last book that I finished for this month is Gutless by Lucy Foley. Also very popular in booktube. So it's essentially, I don't know if I've been saying it correctly because I've been talking about this and I would describe it as like Shutter Island type of book-ish, where it's set in an island and there's a wedding that's going on and somebody gets killed. And it says here, all have a secret, all have a motive, but only one is a murderer. So we're following actually different perspectives throughout the book, which I didn't really enjoy a lot. I feel like it could have worked, but I feel like we could have stuck to the third person, just following the specific characters. And there's a lot more that I feel like you can kind of hide, but also give hints to as a third person perspective, because here we're following each character in a first person perspective, and each of the chapters are pretty short. So we're following each person and we're jumping time. So we have one that's set like a day before and then day of the wedding and then like hours before the murder happened. And I feel like the formatting could have been better. I feel like it would have worked better if the formatting was better, if it was more third person and there was a lot more like hints of secrets and stuff that they're hiding, because I was intrigued, but I feel like there could have been a better build up to the intrigue, you know? So I didn't guess what happened. I kind of did around when it was happening. I was like, oh, okay, yeah. But it kind of like, it was a little too choppy because we're changing perspectives. We're changing time. And so it's like, it got a little too like, come on, you know, you're building it up the wrong way. I feel like it just was built up, like the tension was built up a little too choppy. So it was just kind of like jarring to be taken out from one perspective in a different time to another perspective in a different time. And I was just like, ugh, you know? And that could have been made really good. And I felt like just the whole execution was a little not smooth. There could have been like some changes in between. And so I rated this a 2.5 stars. Yeah. The characters are obviously not people that you will like 100%. There are characters that are more likable and there are characters that are absolutely trash. And I feel like I wanted to hate them more. You know, I wanted to hate them more. The characters that we do like, they're a lot more complicated than just liking them. There's no one person here that's absolutely just good. Maybe there's like one or two, but obviously not, you know? So I was disappointed. And that's the thing about mystery for me. If it's not done well, I couldn't get into it. And that's the thing about mystery. It's, you need to be in the story and you need to be invested and you need to have like that tension that you feel and wanting to learn more and read more. And it's like, I don't have that because it's just jarring to me, the entire perspective that's changing. And the time is just, especially during the time that the climax, there's just a little too much changing. And it's not really, to me, it's not really done very well. So that was very disappointing. So, did I stamp this? Oh, thank God I didn't. Okay, so yeah. So that is all. That is all of the books that I read for this month. That's a lot. And it's not as long as I thought it was going to be. It's a lot shorter than the last time, I think. So, 18 books for this month. So yeah, that's it for this month. I'm very excited for October. I'm joining Fortnite Frights and we're really into spooky season now. So I have a lot more books lined up for spooky season. I'm very, very excited. And so thank you so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed and I will see you in my next video. Bye.